I was in a really serious motorcycle accident a few years ago, and after my crash, everyone told me the same thing. You got dashcam footage, you'll be fine. And I believe that too. The police saw the video, they took witness statements. They told me that the crash wasn't my fault, and that they were preparing to charge the other driver with dangerous driving. And yet, the insurance company tried to do everything they could to avoid pain. The other driver said it wasn't his fault, insisted that it was my fault, and even produced a witness to back his story. And here's the crazy thing. I think about this all the time. If this crash had been decided purely on witness statements alone, I probably would have been blamed for an accident that wasn't my fault and has left me permanently disabled. I spent months in hospital, had to undergo 3 major surgeries, my arm, my pelvis and my leg, months and months of rehab, and 10 plus years later I have permanent disabilities and I live in constant pain for an accident that wasn't my fault, yet other people tried to blame me for, including the insurance company who wanted me to accept liability. So if you're sitting there right now thinking, oh, I've got dashcam footage, I'll be fine, the judge will just watch it and the case will be decided, you need to understand something. In my case, the judge never watched the video. Not because it wasn't allowed, not because it wasn't important, but because the decision had already been made without it. See, most people, and I would have been included, think that courtrooms operate like they do in the movies. Everyone sits down, someone presses play, everyone watches the video, and the truth becomes obvious. But in reality, that would very rarely happen. In the real world, judges don't start with the video. They start with witness statements, police reports, driver accounts, experts. By the time a case reaches a courtroom, the story's already been built on paper. He's got it all in front of him. He's already probably made a decision based on the facts and the evidence that he's been presented already. And so that's where a dashcam is really important. Not because it's going to be played in court, but because most of the heavy lifting's already happened before court. See, a dashcam's a silent witness. Doesn't argue, doesn't exaggerate, doesn't shout and scream in the courtroom. But wait, Your Honour, I've got additional evidence. It just sits there quietly, but it's a massive deterrent. It's saying, if you push this story, you make up lies, you present inconclusive facts, wrong information, it's not going to survive. I've got proof. See, lawyers, well, they're not gamblers. And insurance companies aren't going to put in time, money and resources to try and fight a case that they know they're going to lose. Doesn't make sense. And judges in a court, well, they don't need to watch a video if everybody already knows what it shows, what's on it. All the parties involved have seen the video. They agree on the outcome. This doesn't need to see the light of day inside of a courtroom if it's done its job properly prior to the case. See, in my case, this is exactly what happened. Have a look at this. 24th of February 2017, a year after my crash, which was on the 20th of February 2016. I get this email from a detective senior constable who's working on my case. Now up until this point, this is a year later, the other driver, he's still making a stand. It's not my fault, it's his fault, and I stand by my original statement. And I got witnesses to back me as well. That's what he was saying. But a year later, I get this email saying that his lawyer is requesting to see dashcam footage. They knew that the crash was recorded. So his lawyer's thinking, well, before I go into court and try and win this case for you by blaming the other guy, I want to know exactly what I'm up against. What evidence is there on video? Now he knew, the other guy's lawyer, there was dashcam footage floating about. He wanted to see it. So he sends a letter to the detective constable asking if they'll release the footage to him. So they're basically saying, if you got footage, you give it to us, let us have a look at it. Otherwise, if not, we're sticking to our story. Well, guess what? They get the footage. 2 weeks later, he pleads guilty. Totally changes his view. Oh yeah, it was my fault. My bad. So from that, he gets fined. He was banned from driving for 2 years and even faced possible prison time for dangerous driving, occasionally bodily harm toward me. So we didn't need to go to court. We didn't have to plead to a judge and say, hey, judge, have a look at the dashcam footage. I think you'll sway your decision if you see it. Didn't need to go that far. The lawyer of the other party knew there was dashcam footage, wanted to see it, he saw it, bang, completely changed his mind, or his client's mind, the driver of the other car, and the whole outcome of the entire case was flipped. Now I'm going to show you some dashcam footage from the crash. Now I'm on a motorcycle with my wife on the back. We're driving down a straight road where this other guy cuts in front of us to turn into a petrol station. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, the other guy pulled in front of me. He's at fault. I had the right of way. I was driving in a straight line. He cut directly in front of me. And yes, that is true. I did have the right of way. But if the outcome on this case was decided purely on witness statements alone, I probably would have been blamed, because people were saying I was going fast. People were saying I didn't have my headlight on. The finger was pointed at me, saying I was negligent. I was riding irresponsibly. And what hope did the other guy have of seeing me if I'm riding around without a headlight on? So before I show you parts of the video, I want you to hear a couple of things that were being said about me, and how, if I didn't have this, and all we had was written testimony and statements, would have been a completely different outcome. And these couple of examples will also illustrate just how unreliable witness statements can be. For example, one girl said, straight after the accident, I ran over to the car, the other driver, because I was on a motorcycle, I ran over to the car to make sure everyone was okay. She said, I spoke to 3 girls that were in the car. Here's her actual written statement. The driver had 3 female passengers in the car. I think he may have picked them up from a party. The girl in the front passenger seat seemed a little drunk after the crash, but she did not talk very much. I did not get any of the name or contact details of the passengers. Let that sit for a moment, because the reality is this witness swears that she spoke to 3 female passengers in the car. The reality is there was nobody else in the car. Here's the statement from the guy that was driving the car that supposedly had 3 female passengers in it. He said, at the time of the crash, I was driving my vehicle alone and I was wearing my seatbelt. And it was proven he was on his own. Now here's one of the big things that they tried to damn me on. The driver of the other vehicle said, I didn't have my headlight on. And in his statement he said this, the impact was the first time I was aware of another vehicle approaching that close to me. I had not seen the motorbike coming, and I soon realised he must not have had his headlight on because I didn't see the bright light approaching me. And then he goes on to say, I would have definitely seen the motorbike coming towards me if he had his lights on, because they would have directly faced me and been in my face. Now there was a girl who was working in the petrol station the night of the accident, and she said this, moments prior to the incident, I was serving someone, and I recall noticing the car that was to be involved in the crash was stationary in the northbound lane of Safety Bay Road, in line with the most southern entry-exit driveway to the petrol station. While noticing the stationary car, I saw that a car pulled out of the exit onto the southbound Safety Bay Road, and the stationary car still waited. This car was to my left-hand side. So in other words, she's sitting in the petrol station serving someone. She looks over to her left. She sees a stationary car, a car that had stopped, waiting to turn in the southernmost entry or exit, which is this one here. She saw another car pull out of the exit to the southbound exit onto Safety Bay Road, while the stationary car still waited. This car was to my left-hand side. She then goes on to say, straight after noticing the stationary car, I looked over to my right side as I was serving someone, and I momentarily saw the light from the light pole in the middle of the roundabout at the Malibu Road and Safety Bay Road intersection. And this light reflected off a motorbike that was travelling straight through the roundabout. It was travelling in a south direction along Safety Bay Road. I noticed straight away that the headlight of the motorbike was not on, and that grabbed my attention, and I pointed it out to the customer that I was serving. And I literally said to the customer, look at this idiot. He has no light on, and he has a passenger. He's going to get knocked off. So that claim, as well as the claim from the driver of the car, just makes it look like, hey, here's a guy coming through the roundabout, no light on, there's a car sitting there waiting to turn, doesn't see the guy with the no light on, hits him. Well, what did you expect? If that's the only claim that the judge has got to go on, the witness and the driver both saying the same thing, that I didn't have my light on, well, of course it's going to end badly for me. Here's something the driver said. Quite a lot of people arrived from everywhere. A little girl ran over and said not to take the rider's helmet off. I stayed near my car and people were seeing to the rider, and I was just in shock. I did not move my car so that people could see where it had come to a stop. The police arrived about 15 minutes after and they told me to move my car off the road. So he's saying, straight after the crash, I stayed beside my car, I left it stationary and parked so that everybody could see exactly where I'd stopped, and I didn't move my car until the police arrived 15 minutes later and told me to move it. Have a look at the footage. The crash happened at 21:25. That's the moment of impact. 21:29, 4 minutes later, no police in sight. There he is getting in his car. There he is moving his car. I remember this part where the girl that worked in the petrol station said, oh yeah, I looked to my left, there was a car, it was sitting there for a while, another car pulled out and they were still sitting there. Well, she actually said that the car that hit me was sitting stationary for about 30 seconds or so, where she says in her statement, I would say that the stationary car was stopped there for about 30 seconds before the crash happened. Well, here's the car coming down the road. The brake lights come on for him to slow down, but he's not stopped waiting for traffic. He didn't stop at all, definitely not for 30 seconds. So, the witness said, the bike did not look like it slowed down to travel through the roundabout. It looked to keep a consistent speed the whole way through. It looked to be travelling a little over 60 kilometres per hour, and it seemed to maintain that speed through and after the roundabout. I could not hear the bike. It was not a loud bike. The speed limit of that road is 60 kilometres per hour, which it is. It was about 10 seconds after I noticed the motorbike travelling through the roundabout, and I made the comment that the impact happened. So she's saying she spots a motorbike coming through the roundabout, no lights on, looks to be doing about 60 kilometres an hour and not slowing down at all. She's like, it's probably about 10 seconds later from when I first saw it and said to the customer, hey, look at this idiot, that the impact happened. So I've already calculated. From the time I was on the roundabout to the impact, yes, it probably was about 10 seconds, and we'll have a look at that. But if what she's saying is true, that I'm doing 60 kilometres an hour, well, 60 kilometres an hour in 10 seconds puts me about 160 metres down the road. So let's have a look at the video to see how long it did take me to get through the roundabout from when she first saw me to the point of where the impact happened. Now you can see me riding down the road here, and this is probably about the first time you can see my headlight at the roundabout. So I'm just approaching the roundabout here. So let's start the timer from when you first see me here at the roundabout. Now here's the impact, and as you can see, that's about 10 seconds, or just after. So yeah, she was right, it was about 10 seconds. So let's calculate the distance of how far it is from the start of the roundabout to the point where the crash happened. And as you can see, it's about 85 metres. So if it took me 10 seconds to travel 85 metres, then I'm only doing about 30 kilometres an hour. Certainly not 60, and certainly not over 60, like she claimed I was. Now, I'm not reading these statements to attack anyone. I believe that these people were telling their truth. I don't believe for a moment that any of the witnesses were deliberately or intentionally lying or making stories up. I honestly believe they were telling their truth as they saw it, or as they perceived it. But what I am doing is showing you how confidently wrong multiple people can be, even minutes after the event happened. So I could imagine if you went and asked a witness for a statement 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months after something happened, their memory would probably be quite foggy. Oh, let me think. Was it a blue car? I can't remember. But the statements we're reading here are the statements that the police took moments after the crash. The girl in the petrol station honestly believes that she came out and talked to 3 girls that were sitting in the car that crashed into me. Both the girl in the petrol station as well as the driver of the other car honestly believe that I didn't have my headlight on. The girl in the petrol station honestly believes that I must have been speeding, that I was driving dangerously, illegally. So if this case had gone to court with just these statements, I probably would have been blamed for the accident. That wasn't my fault. That has left me disabled. So as I said, the dashcam didn't argue, didn't need to go to court and be shown in front of everybody. It didn't need to stand up and say, I object, Your Honour. She says I was doing 60 k's an hour. The dashcam says I was doing 30. I object, Your Honour. Both he and her say I didn't have my headlights on. The dashcam says I did. Never got to that. Didn't need to get to that. The dashcam collapsed every false story, inconclusive factual evidence, or wrong evidence, or fabricated evidence, one by one, before it even needed to get to court. But here's the thing, and most people probably don't want to hear this. The dashcam footage doesn't automatically save you. If it misses a critical moment, if it fails, bang, right at point of impact, doesn't save the video. Or it does save the video, but the file gets corrupted and you can't download it off the SD card. Or maybe it does capture everything, but from the wrong angle, and it's missing important information or important details. Then all you've got to go on is what the witnesses say. And you can see how potentially damning that could be. You can only go on the facts that you've got. So if the facts are from witnesses, other drivers, that's all you got. If you got witness statements from witnesses and other drivers and dashcam footage, then that can completely change the story. And it can completely change the story of other drivers. In my case, the other driver said, no, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. 12 months later, he was adamant, no, that guy didn't have his lights on. And it wasn't until the dashcam footage was viewed by his lawyer and him, who suddenly turned around and said, oh my God, I can't argue that case. I look like a fool. I'm not going to court and saying he didn't have his lights on, because if they do show the video, and again, they shouldn't need to, but if they did have to, the evidence is right in front of you. You're not going to argue with that. You'd be mad to. So the thing with the dashcam is not so much that it can be used in court, which I'm sure it can be if you need it to be, but rather when the case starts building on paper, witnesses, police records, statements from drivers, the case is starting to build, you got this in the background saying, hold on a minute, let's double check those facts because I also have some evidential proof. And this is another part that most people get wrong. You know, if you're sitting there and thinking, oh, I've been in an accident, but I've got dashcam footage, I'll just wait to show it in court. You're already doing it wrong. In my case, the driver didn't wait to sit in front of a judge to tell his side of the story, and he didn't change his story in front of a judge. Oh, Your Honour, I used to think that he didn't have his headlight on, but now I've changed my mind. I can see that he did, so I want to change my plea. Never got to that point. In fact, my accident happened in 2016. It was a year later, almost to the day, that he changed his plea from, oh, I'm not guilty to, yes, I am guilty. That was a year later. The court case didn't happen for another 3 years or so. But everything had long been resolved. Liability had been accepted. Blame had been shifted. Everything got sorted long before the court case. By the time we got to court, it was, hey, this happened, nobody's arguing it, here's the outcome. So if you've clicked on this video because your question is, can I use dashcam footage as evidence in court? Well, the short answer is yes, of course you can. The judge would obviously like to take all facts and all evidence and any proof that there is into consideration before he comes to a verdict. So the short answer is yes. But if you've got dashcam footage and it's done its job properly, then you shouldn't have to take it into court. It's already done what it needed to do.